Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for signing in here for the webinar, The 5 Financial Metrics You Must Know for 2016. This is the right place, and just a little housekeeping at the very beginning. We do have a section there on the right side of your screen in that box where you can ask questions. We will have a question and answer session at the end to answer any questions that you might have coming up. Do not worry, we are recording this webinar. We'll be able to send you a link to the replay, a copy of the slides, and those 2 ebooks that we promised you, the 8 common HIPAA errors and the 5 tips for better contract negotiation. So you are at the right place, the Metagame webinar, the 5 financial metrics you must know for 2016. I'm the guy on the right. I'm the VP of Marketing. I'm your host for today. The person who will be educating you on those 5 financial metrics that you really need to monitor next year will be Robert Romero, our VP of Business Development with a couple of decades experience in the healthcare industry, out there on the streets dealing with practices just like yours and helping them to increase their reimbursement rates and put more to the bottom line. Robert, are you there?
Yes, sir, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to get started, and whether you are taking measurements from 2015 and making your strategic plans for 2016, whether you've done a little measuring before the ICD-10 implementation and you want to make sure that everything is going as smooth as possible after the ICD-10 implementation, or whether you're just a real statistical numbers nerd like me about your reimbursement and getting the maximum money in possible. I'm hoping that the concepts we're going to go over today are going to help you look at your own practices in a little bit different light and show you a few tests that we use kind of in a professional revenue cycle environment to monitor ourselves and our clients. So we're going to go through some different ratios, an overall collection rate and a claim collection rate, and I'll kind of define those and help you know why that's our starting point. We're going to look at reimbursement ratios, which is kind of dollars in versus charges out, monies that we've gotten paid. But instead of an overall one, we're going to break it up by payer, by code. You can even do it by location or provider if you wanted to. We're going to look at write-offs, and we're not going to look at all write-offs. We're going to look at a very specific segment of write-offs in a practice. And I'll show you why we look at that and what we get out of that very specific segment. AR, I'm one of those people out there that believe that days in AR is a measurement you should take. However, it might not be the best measurement in kind of modern times anymore. It's a little too easily manipulated or adjusted, so to speak. And there are 2 other ways to look at AR that I'm going to invite you to look at today, and I'm hoping you're going to see the view that I do, that these are much better ways to measure the health, or not so much, of an accounts receivable claims within a practice. And then we're going to look at what I'm going to call a heat chart, which is basically a matrix of the top payers and top codes, and about 4 or 5 different ways you can look at that information to get good business information out of your billing information. So let's go. When we talk about an overall collection rate and a closed claim collection rate, these really are the 2 simplest to come up with. And in each one of these categories, I'm going to try to define that for you, and then we'll look at some examples. Your overall collection rate is simply all the money you got in over all the charges that went out to generate those. And like you got in $1 million this year, you sent out $4 million worth of charges, right? Very, very simple ratio. A closed claim collection rate is the same money that came in, but it's only over the related charges that generated those claims. So the overall collection rate is going to have AR and write-off, claims hung up in AR, claims that got written off. The closed claim collection rate is not going to have anything that's stuck in AR. It's not going to have any claims that's written off. It's going to be the charges that went out and the monies that came in relative to those charges. And it should be a good average of your better paid claims. It's not my claims that went out and came back perfectly to the letter, to the penny. It's an average of your better claims. And when we look at one of those ratios versus the other, the differential between the two ends up being kind of a total potential for revenue improvement in the practice. The big fat question is, what if all of my claims, including the ones that got hung up and had write-offs, what if all of them in aggregate came through and got paid as well as the average of my better claims, my closed claims? Okay? So let's look at some numbers. This is an actual slice from an analysis that we do commonly for practices that are looking to work with Medigain. We do it as a courtesy. As a matter of fact, all of these we do as a courtesy to give us all a good starting point and all good targets. So in the bottom right-hand corner of the graph, okay, you'll see the collections ratio for this particular group, and it's $2 million worth of charges and about $900,000 worth of reimbursements. And that's going to give us our 46% reimbursement ratio, our overall or our practice reimbursement ratio. Don't look at it on a 100-point scale because every one of the practices on this call probably has a little bit different charge markup or charge schedule. You take your local Medicare allowable, you mark it up by 2 times, by 1.5 times, by 3 times. Whatever fits your specialty, your practice, your payers, your state. It doesn't really matter what that number, that 46 is, because we're definitely going to compare that against a like percentage of closed claims. So in this is just kind of a general production table setting page. You can get this, all the slides when we're all done, and I'd invite you to come back and look at some of the things we look at, because we also, in the same process, look at trends and things like that. For this particular practice, the closed claim reimbursement ratio, it's not on this page, it's on the next page, is 54%. So of all of their claims, including AR and write-offs, 46% is the money that came in to the total claims. But 54% was the same money over just those associated claims. And the difference between the two, mathematically, for this group, is $160,000. That's their total target for making improvements, both corrective action and revenue enhancement in their own revenue cycle to get up to the answer to that question, what if all my claims came in as good as the average? Okay? So next test we're going to go on to is going to help us see a different aspect of the billing, and that's going to be the same kind of ratio test, but we're going to split it up by payer and by code. Now, when we do a reimbursement ratio, we're only talking about closed claims. So the claim that was paid or mostly paid by the payer, paid or mostly paid by the patient, perhaps a minor write-off was taken for a very small amount, and then the contractual adjustment was taken. So this should be the way a claim's supposed to go, right? So within our payer breakdown, we're going to look at comparing payers against other payers, maybe by financial class, but definitely using one of them as kind of a baseline. And then with the CPT codes, same thing. We're going to pit them kind of against each other to make sure that we're performing, our billing group is performing at its optimal reimbursement across all codes. And if we have a headache, or if we've got an area where there's a code set or a code group or a specific code or three that doesn't have the same performance ratio as others, it means that's probably getting requests for medical records, pre-auths aren't done very well. Other things are happening to where we're just not getting the performance out of that particular code. And with payers,
Robert,
it's the same ratio.
That sounds like an important test. I mean, the financial police are coming to take a closer look at that. Just a little webinar humor there.
Yeah, and forgive me, I'm between two big glass buildings at the moment in the giant metropolis of downtown Dallas. So when somebody goes by, it kind of reverberates up through the buildings. But so let's look at some actual numbers here on each one of these tests. And if another one goes by, I'll mute real quickly so I don't blow everybody's ears out. But this is the reimbursement ratio test done by Payor. Okay? So remember, these are all closed claims. And you should have in the back of your mind your overall payer mix by charges as well, to know that if a payer is higher up in the list here by ratio, is it because they're a larger payer? Is it because their fee schedule is unequal to another one? So there's a lot of things that you can take into account to look at these. But I'm gonna look at two specific ones for this particular test. By the way, the 54% that's near the bottom right corner of the numerical graph, this is the average. So this is the closed claim average that we compared to the one that was in the 40s as our overall, right? So Medicare and Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm going to focus on these two inside this test. The Medicare reimbursement ratio is a good baseline to use in many practices because you know that they pay you accurately and quickly, maybe not as much as everybody else, but at least accurately and quickly if you do things right. So if that's a good test or a good baseline for your billing department or for even our billing department per client, then we can look at things like Blue Cross, we can look at things like United or other commercial payers, and we can rank them. Are we getting more or less money? Well, if it's a commercial payer, we should get more money. If it's one of the Medicare-like plans in some of the states out there that y'all are in that actually pay you less than Medicare, then that number would have expected to be a little bit lower. But not only contractually, the difference between the two, we can look at the performance. So 46% for Blue Cross, 29% for Medicare. Remember, don't look at this on a 100-point scale. Look at them relative to one another. If we rounded these up to a 100-point scale, would we really get that? Is our Blue Cross Blue Shield payment that much more than Medicare? Or are we just really good at submitting and appealing and getting the max collections from Blue Cross? Or is our Medicare one challenged? Are we maybe not performing up to the level that we should with this particular Medicare ratio? The key thing when you look at reimbursement ratios, remember, pit them against each other, make mental adjustments if you've got differences in your charge schedule, and it should show you the health of we submit and collect these claims quite well. We submit and collect these claims not as good as some of the other payers. So what's up with that? All right. Now, next set of numbers is going to be the same, except divided by CPT code. So on this next page, we're looking at the the same type of ratio, the same type of math, same 54%, total reimbursement ratio for closed claims, except in this one, we're going to just pit like codes against like codes. If I'm doing this right, I'm looking at an ophthalmology practice, and their 66984 and your 66982 are very, very similar codes. One's a complex and one's a normal cataract procedure. And rightly so, the reimbursement ratios are very, very similar. Now, if we want to be real nitpicky, for some reason, we get a little bit better reimbursement on the complex cataract procedure than we do the normal one. And charge per charge, all marked up equally from the Medicare allowable, we're getting about, if you scale this up to 100-point scale, we're getting about 3% more dollar per dollar for what we submit to what we collect. And it doesn't matter if one is charged higher or lower, if they're all marked up equally. For some reason, we do that claim better than the other one. Same exercise, you could look at different groups of clinical codes. You could look at clinical versus hospital consult type codes. You can look procedure to procedure, but keep them in the same family and see if you're doing one better than the other. It may help you go back and review why we're underperforming on one code or performing really well on another. So next test, we're going to be looking at, once again, one more metric that is going to be a little new to many people on the call, and I'm going to hopefully help you understand why you should be looking at this particular test more so than write-offs in total. Write-offs in total is a great test. We all need to know it because how much we write off versus all of our charges, we've got a certain tolerance, right, for human error. But if we take our write-offs and we only look at write-offs where the total claim or the total charge was also written off in whole. So partial payments don't matter, other things don't matter to me, not in this test. I want to know how many write-offs did I have that were catastrophic in nature. The entire claim was written off. Because if I trace those back, I get root cause. If I look at all my write-offs, I've got a lot of noise in there, but just my total write-offs, my complete zero pays, if I have 30 of them in the month, and that's within tolerance, because you've got 3,000 claims a month, then if they're all for different reasons, that's human error, and that might be acceptable. But if they're for two different and distinct reasons, we've got 20 for one reason and 20 for another reason, that cues a place where corrective action can be taken. We can trace back that to its root cause, and we can fix it, okay? So that's why you want to look at just the total donut paid, zero paid write-offs. So let's look at the numbers once again. The test itself, you'll notice we actually have it presented in a manner that shows when the write-offs were taken too. This is a side effect of the same test. If you've got write-offs coming, and this looks like an AR test, right? So if you've got write-offs coming in the 30 and 60-day buckets, there better be a pretty significant justification for you to take a write-off that early in the revenue cycle. This particular practice is a very large practice, so the write-off amounts look high if you're a 2 or 3 dot practice, but this is a pretty large group. But still, to me, if they've got write-offs in the 30 and 60-day column, why would that be? And those are the ones we need to trace because something catastrophic went wrong. We're measuring write-offs in this test. Once getting some of my theme here, we're going to break it out by payer, and we're going to break it out by code. If we know our payer charge matrix, our payer mix, if there's a payer that's higher up in the write-off list than they are in my charges list, that's a quick cue that that payer, we've got challenges getting claims paid to the point where they've got more write-offs for charges than others. If Medicare is your biggest payer and they've got more write-offs than others, that might be accurate. But this will help us see what proportion of write-offs are coming from what payer. Once again, compared to our overall payer mix. The CPT code test, it looks and acts exactly the same. In this test, we want to be looking at write-offs that were catastrophic. If you use a fluoroscope, for example, hardly any of those codes get paid anymore. Very few get paid. They do, and there's an art to getting a fluoroscopy paid for these days. But other specialties also have different codes that just don't get paid. So you're allowed to line item veto those out of this test or out of this list. I mean, you know what goes on in ground level for your practice when you run this test, or when we run it for you. So those I'm not talking about. But a common procedure code that's typically not bundled, a common hospital consult or common clinical practice or common code that is higher up on this write-off list than it is in the charges list. This is where we want to trace these back, find out what went wrong because something catastrophic went wrong. And if we had more than 3 of these in the month, that's a place we can go back, take corrective action, and truly make a difference to prevent these types of write-offs in the future. Okay? The whole principle of looking at the 0 write-offs is to make a fix. Okay? So we're going to go on now to the next test. And this is where, if you haven't come to some of our webinars or seminars before, seen us at conferences, this is where everyone scratches their head when I tell them, please don't pay attention to the days in AR anymore. Run the tests. However, I'd like for you to look at your AR in a different manner because there's so much more information than just days in AR. We're going to break the AR down by its buckets, but also by payer, by code, even by provider, and by location. If we've got lopsided AR in one particular location more than others by their charge volume, then we know to look and scrutinize that location for something that's not being done as good as the balance of your other locations. If you've got a provider, same thing, that's got a higher AR per proportion to their like providers. And if you're a multi-specialty group, you may have to fudge and do things all over the place to make that one equal. But if we've got 10 guys and girls that are all the same specialty, all the same payer mix, and one of them's got, or 2 of them have a greater AR percentage than the rest, once again, that's where we want to go back and further scrutinize to find out what it is. It could be pre-auths, it could be verification of benefits, it could be requests for medical records, it could be AR follow-up. It could be a lot of different things, but at least we know to start looking back in that spot. When we get overlap, that provider, this payer, this code, we know specifically where to trace things back. So breaking AR out by payer, by code, and by other factors help you pinpoint where there's a drop-off in performance and where we can all go back and find out what we need to do to level that up. All right? All that leveling up, by the way, is money in the bank, which is why we're all here. So let's look at the numbers again. So in an AR test, there's one other real key thing that I think is much more powerful than a days in AR, and that's AR rollover. AR rollover happens when the practice gets a certain amount of their money, if not all of their money in by a certain particular day. Not the same as days in AR. It's all the money I'm getting in, I'm getting almost everything in by this date compared to the date of service. And if I'm not getting anything after that, that's AR rollover. It's easy to illustrate and it's easy to test for. You can do it in one snapshot like we have on the page here. Look at the bottom line of either one of the graphs. The current column and maybe half of the 30-day column, that's good AR to all of us, right? That's our cash flow forecast for next month. But starting usually about halfway through the 30-day column into the 60, 90, and 120, we want to see a nice sharp slope down. If I've got $100,000 in current AR, nice round number for me, then I'd like to see $40,000 in the next AR bucket, the 60-day bucket. If I've got $40,000 in that bucket, I'd like to see $15,000 in the 60-day bucket. So 140, and down, a nice sharp slope. My 90-day bucket should really only have 3 or 4% of whatever my current bucket was. And that slope down means that we're getting in our money in on the first pass. We're getting money in by fixing rejections and getting those resubmitted. We're getting money in by submitting medical records when they're requested. We're getting money in on a first appeal or second appeal. And by the time we get to the 120 column, we've gotten all of our money in, barring a couple funky, long-going appeals. All right? If we have what we see here on this page, in this snapshot, the 60-day bucket at $46,000 is within a standard deviation of its 90-day brother. That means we got no money in between that bucket and the next. And then that, once again, is rolling over and accumulating in the 120 bucket. In this particular case, it's probably day 45 or so, where this particular practice has gotten all their money in. They don't get anything after that. I don't know if it's lack of manpower. I don't know if it's lack of effort. I don't know if they just don't have a proper or professional denials management process or program in place for people to do that job. But in your practice, go back. Take a snapshot of June and look at the buckets. Take a snapshot of July and take a snapshot of August. If your 60-day bucket in June becomes your 90-day bucket in July, and that becomes your 120-day accumulated bucket after that, that means your AR is rolling over bucket to bucket. We're not getting in any more money in, and that shows that we've overwhelmed our billing team, or we just simply don't have a proper or expert denials management process in place. Okay, and this is a perfect illustration of it on your page right now. So AR rollover, much more important than days in AR. What day are you getting most of your money in? The breakdown by CPT code and Payor are also very important. Remember, if we've got a code higher up in the list of AR than we do in charge production, that means that code in particular is getting hung up more often than other codes. And that needs to be traced back and addressed. Why are we having AR rollover in this particular code? The one I highlighted in the top, the 73620 procedure code, perfect illustration of AR rollover. We're getting what we get paid on the first pass as we did the analysis for this particular group, and we're just really not getting anything more in after that. Same thing with the 11721. Those particular codes are rollover offenders. In the bottom, the payers, Blue Cross, big rollover offender in the fact that it looks like we're getting our claims paid up front, and then that's it. We don't get any money in after that. Same thing with Medicare and the other one I highlighted of United. So in this practice is payer mix. If the AR offender is higher in the list than it should be, that's something to trace back and fix. If it's a payer that's showing a high degree of rollover, that's another one to go back and fix. I'll show you a good-looking one. Go down to the Medicare Plus Blue. All right, even though this is a secondary one, typically separate secondary payer. The 30-day column, 4,600, 60-day column, 1,900, 90-day column, 750. Not as sharp a slope down as I would like in total, but not so bad. That doesn't show a lot of AR. So one of the last tests that we're going to look at is another real key one that I think exemplifies the fact that inside of your billing information, you've got a lot of good business information. Now, not many practice management systems, even the best, the top tier systems, help you develop this matrix very well. So you may need a reporting program, or you may need one of our analysts to do it for you. But taking and creating a matrix of all your top payers and all your top codes, and measuring closed claims now, closed claims again, the actual payment received on average for that code and that payer. This is good business information. And I'm going to call it a heat chart, because when you see it in a minute, you're going to wish you could print this page out. In fact, I'd invite you to get your own chart, or even use this one as a mock-up, and print it 6 times, print it 8 times. Get 8 different colored highlighters, because you're going to note some things as an optimist, a pessimist. You're going to listen to a bunch of my nerdiness to see how you would look at this test, and you may come up with a number of different ways that you view this information that are going to help you across the practice. Let's just go in and take a look at the test itself and what the numbers look like. So down the left-hand column and across the top, on the left side of the page, you're going to see the code sets and the payers. Do me a favor, whether you're looking at this on the screen or whether you're already kind of printed it out, put your hand over the right-hand side, put your hand over the whole green side, because it's the matrix I'm going to focus on right now versus a couple of my tests. This isn't the contractual amount. This isn't a plus or minus. This is the actual payment average that comes in the bank from this code crossed with that payer. Okay? The optimists of all of us on the call are going to go through by code, and they're going to highlight in pink the best, highest payment coming from all the payers. The pessimist is going to do the exact opposite. With yellow, you're going to say on this code or that code, who's paying me the least? Just because you want to know, because you've always thought this. It's now you've got it defined for you in front of you. The next kind of reiteration through your brain might be, well, of my best payer, who's my highest and who's my lowest from this code? Who's my best and my worst? Where's my average? Conveniently, average is the first green column for you. Who's above my average and who's below my average? who is my max, who is my minimum. My test that I like to run on this after I do all the others is what's the Medicare allowable? And if I asked each one of you, so slowly mentally think about this, if you could get just the Medicare allowable every time you ran that claim across all your payers, would you take it? Even if you had a 75% Medicare payer mix, you'd probably say no, because my commercial payers pay me more. If you're one of these poor souls in New York or New Jersey that has a handful of payers that pay you less than Medicare, you might be on the other side of them. You say, yeah, I'd take Medicare all day. But in most cases, you're going to say no. I think my commercial plans are going to make up for more than I would ever miss in a write-off here or there. So measure it. This particular group's measurement shows the Medicare allowable in their region, their local Medicare allowable. And it shows the average payment, the CPT average, remember. Did they get paid more or less than that allowable? I'm going to eyeball a couple of these if you don't mind. Say that the top line is easy for me. CPT average, $75 for that removal, little excision. Medicare allowable, $47. Commercial payers are doing us right. We're on the plus side. We passed that test. We're getting more money in overall across all our claims than the Medicare allowable. I'm going to drop down a couple. I'm just going to pick on the one that's fourth down. CPT average, $80, $79.56. Medicare allowable, $109. Maybe this is a bundled code. Maybe this is a secondary code, and it's supposed to be lower. But if that's not the case, do we have a challenge with medical records being requested that we're not doing well? Are we keeping good documentation? Are we getting pre-auths for this code for some payers that need them? And why would we be below the Medicare allowable? If it's not a bundling thing, then that's a place we all want to trace back, find out what the for real deal answer is, and fix it. So this is a good test overall. It's a business test, not so much a billing test. But in this particular case, this practice kind of passes about 2/3 of them and fails about 2/3 of them. Overall, I think they're a pass. But the next thing you're going to do, by the way, is I know my Blue Cross contract by heart. I may add a column if I were y'all, and my actual payment. How close is it to my contract? Am I trued up to my contract? Am I getting what I'm supposed to be getting? Or are there partial payments that are bringing me down a little bit? So great test to run. Very good information to have. We've recommended our clients and the other 500,000 practices in the country run this type of test before the implementation of ICD-10. Run it again 3 or 4 months in, which is coming up soon, and then run it again a year later. Did you have any degradation in any of your payments just because of ICD-10? Did you have any degradation in your payments because the Medicare allowable went down and your contract, contrary to a lot of best practices, was tied to Medicare allowable? You didn't negotiate your contract dollar for dollar for code. You just said, hey, I'll take this much of Medicare allowable. Medicare allowable goes down, lo and behold, so does your payments on your other commercial claims. So very good business information inside of this type of matrix. So, Clint, we've gone through a lot of information very quickly. If you've picked up on my theme here, it's that a modern era practice truly has to have very good analytics on your billing, very good analytics on your business, And when you've got them at your fingertips, you can use that information to improve your reimbursements, which is the way we use it as a professional revenue cycle management company, right? Because we're all seeking max reimbursement. You can use it for so many other things in your practice as well. If you don't have a company that's providing you these type of metrics, get one. It's something that we do daily with our reporting module that connects to all the key practice management systems that we work on. Clint, I don't know if we have any questions that's come up out of that. I know I went quick, or anything that you want me to add on to while we still have time?
Yeah, you brought it up because the question was, I'm not sure my practice management system can pull these reports. And you started to touch on our reporting and analytics portal, Metagain Insights. So if they're on an old antiquated system that's like 10 years old, how do they go about getting data like this? I know you said at the very beginning that this is part of the process that you go through when you're first talking to them about them coming on board with Metagain, right? And then after they come on board with Metagain, touch base with them, fill them in a little bit about Metagain Insights.
Okay, so let's address the practice management question from the attendee real quick. So if you're on an older generation of system, wow, that's the most polite way I can say that. Or if you're on a very, very basic system, it is very difficult to get this information. They don't keep or store claims level data very well. But if you're on a brand name, a big brand name, a next gen, a next tech, a Allscripts, a Centricity, an advanced MD type level of a practice management system, whether it's easy to get to or not, the information is definitely there. So when we do a complementary practice analysis, we go into that claims level data and we pull all this, and we do assemble this with our business intelligence team and our reporting team so that myself and all the business development managers can interpret that for a practice. It helps them see a lot of information about themselves they've probably never seen before, and it helps them decide, should I use a professional group or not? And by the way, is Metagain a good match for me? Because they are doing all this work to maximize reimbursement. The other side is you've got a system that we call Metagain Insights, which is an online reporting portal. It attaches to the database of every single one of the top tier systems that we work on. I mean, add Epic, add Greenway to the ones I listed. I probably skipping one more, but that is at all of our clients' fingertips to see these matrices, to see all this data in a much easier to read fashion than a typical AR report that even the best practice management systems kick out. They'll give you a fantastic AR report, but some of the other data to crisscross, run ratios, split it out by code, by payer, is a little bit more difficult to get out of even the better practice management systems. So for our client service managers to monitor their clients, for our clients to monitor us, we provide this Metagain Insights reporting portal. It's a great tool. If you want a demo of that, or if you have interest in seeing what a practice analysis would look like for your practice, we do them complimentary for someone that's seriously looking at using a professional group like us. And we do have a demonstrator version of the Metagain Insights that shows you so many of the financial points that you need to run a sophisticated practice today. I invite everybody on it to ask for that demo. Demo key, you can log in, you can play with it yourself. We'll just give you a guidance to get you started. But all of that very valuable information, and thanks for reminding me to say that, Clint.
Yeah, and with Metagain Insights, not only the reports you saw here, but you can do it by doctor, by groups of doctors, and by locations. So like that one client that we have that has some pulmonary, some internal, and some cardio. They can pull the 3 cardio doctors out of that practice, and they can pull the 7 GI guys, and they can do the 4 pulmonary guys, or they can do it in an aggregate, right? So you can break it down by groups of doctors and by locations. Like if you're in Fort Wayne and Columbus and Detroit, well, you can see from the different locations as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's click, click, click. It's easy to use. And then you save your favorite kind of views so that you don't have to set up a report every time you want to see it or change something. You get the report just the way you want it, and you save that view, and then it's in a quick pick list. So easy to use is another. I mean, reporting is great information, but it's not easy to use. It's people just don't do it. So we try to make it as easy to use as well.
Okay, well, it looks like in your explanations there, Robert, you covered just about, well, you covered all the questions that we had up there. So one last call on questions, folks. Do be expecting an email from me, Clint Hughes, where I'll be giving you a link to where you can access the slides, the replay, and also those ebooks that we promised you. Well, that looks, I guess you explained everything very well, Robert. That about does this for today. So, Robert, thank you very much for guiding us through this webinar today. It was most enlightening. And for you all, keep a watch out for the email coming from me. And thank you for attending today. I hope you have a great holiday season and a great 2016. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
we will
everybody.
see you next time around. All right. Bye-bye.